Should be okay. It's good? So we're going to continue on with Pele Yoetz. Last week we spoke about loving Hashem. This week we'll speak about, last week we spoke about loving Hashem and Chinuch. This week we'll speak about a person loving his spouse and Halachot Shabbat. So he says over here, love between one husband and wife is an obligation that they have to have a tremendous amount of love for each other. And he says, first he's going to start with the importance of a husband loving his wife. Then Chachamim tell us that chayav le'ahava kegufo, a person is obligated to love his wife like his body, like himself, and to respect her more than he respects himself. And that means that whatever you have, you give her more. There's 2 portions of food, you give her the better one. Right? That means you respect her more than you respect yourself. But you have to make sure that your love for her doesn't refrain you from serving Hashem. Why? Sometimes a person, especially when people first get married, or some people have good relationships even 10 years later, right? They say, why? I'll just go off topic a little. Says, why is it that when people are going out, they're so excited and just get married and they're going out and so on and so forth, after 5, 6, 7 years already, right? They don't really go out as much, just to find time to talk to her, so on and so forth, right? Because a lot of people, they think like, we're already married. It's really, you have to continue that. You have to continue going out, you have to continue speaking, continue listening, continue respecting. It's a work, it's a long, ongoing process, right? And a person, sometimes it might be tough, but a person has to do it also l'chvod Hashem. When a person is nice and kind and he's listening and he takes his wife out and he understands the importance of Shalom Bayit and he keeps Shalom Bayit in the house, it brings the Shekhinah to the house. Today we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, we don't have the Shekhinah there. But when a person is very careful and people have Shalom Bayit, it brings the Shekhinah to the house. It brings blessing and everything into the house. Everything comes from Shalom Bayit. Everything comes from Shalom Bayit. Everything in the house comes from Shalom Bayit. The Ch'tai Rebbe says 50% of a person's children is Shalom Bayit and the other 50% is davening. 50-50, that's it. Right? Chachamim tell us, but you have to be careful. Sometimes a person becomes too attached to his wife and comes to Bittul Toran. A person sometimes doesn't know how to keep a proper balance, and it comes to davening late, comes to learning late, going out, this and so on and so forth. You have to be very careful. Because why Chachamim tell us anybody that goes after the advice of his wife will end up in hell, the Chachamim say.
In Torah, the advice of the wife in Torah?
When it comes to spirituality, a person needs to be very careful because women don't understand this concept as much as men do. The importance of learning, the importance of davening, the importance of, generally, right? Sometimes it's the other way around, but generally, right, usually men understand more of what's happening for them here and they understand more of how they're growing. Women don't understand as much, right? If they see that a person's going and changing, they want to push you more towards that area, but sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they tell you, let's go out here, let's do this, let's go that. They don't understand that you might miss this, you might miss a shear, it might take away from davening. They don't make these cheshbonos like you do. So therefore, really, you have to be careful. You have to know how to keep a proper balance, right? And it says the main love between a husband and wife should be the love of a soul also, internal, right? The Gemara says a person marries a girl for the wrong reasons. It says Eliyahu Hanavi sort of ties them up and they start to... Right, the point being is, the Gemara says over there, a person that gets married to a girl for the wrong reasons, also they won't have proper children. The Gemara says the children will be so on. The person has to marry the girl for the right reasons. The person has to get married also l'shem shamayim, for spiritual purposes. That should be their main partnership between a husband and wife in life, is to build spiritually, to build midah, to build spiritually, to help each other, to complete each other, to make sure that they'll both complete each other, to help each other get to Olam Haba. It should have a goal of more than just physicality, right? But a person has to also know that at home he has to teach his wife, right, and modesty, but he has to make sure that he does it a proper way. People don't learn when you put forth, right? It's to be done at the right time, with the right words, with the right way. A shurim, a little divrei Torah at home. Maybe a person should learn with his wife every night for like 5 minutes, take a book and learn together for 5-10 minutes in the morning or at night. These things, they grow, they develop. It builds also a relationship. When you learn with your wife, Torah and stuff like it, builds more of a spiritual relationship between you also. Person needs to speak at home, he needs to teach his spouse the importance of not speaking Lashon Hara, because women are much more prone to these things, because they're on the phone a lot, they talk a lot. The Gemara says, right? The Gemara says that 10 points of speech came down into the world, 9 women took. Women talk a lot. Right, for us last night I took my wife out from Lava Malka, let's say. Right? We went out to like one of these dairy places, and it was so loud. I told my wife, if you pay attention, 99% of all the voices you hear are all women voices here. You don't hear the men. Right? Women love to talk. That's just their nature. They could talk and talk and talk, and therefore you have to make sure, right, that you teach your wife at home, right, to stay away from Lashon Hara. Women are also much more prone to frustration or being aggravated by something more than men, right? Men are not as prone, not unless they have an issue, but generally men are not as prone. Women are more prone to these things, right? You have to teach your wife the importance of not getting angry, of not cursing, of speaking nicely. Sometimes, you find people that could curse people. You got to be careful not to curse people. These things that a person has to be careful at home to be able to teach his wife everything she needs to do at home. Hilchot Shabbat. I know a couple, right? He told me he learns with his wife every Shabbat on the table. They learn Hilchot Shabbat in English, and they went through like a few books already, right? To bring it out there, to teach them at home, so your wife is doing Shabbat properly. She's keeping the laws of Lashon Hara properly, because when she knows it, she'll teach it to your children. It's also this is love. When you love your spouse, you care for their spirituality. You make sure that they're not sinning. You make sure that they're going to get to Olam Haba. You love them. Love is a spiritual connection. Love is spiritual. It's not only that you love them so you buy them a nice watch. You love them so you buy them a nice dress. You love them, you take them out to eat. That's true. You're supposed to do those things. You're not supposed to be stingy. You're supposed to spend money on your wife, right? But also you're supposed to love them spiritually. There's supposed to be a spiritual connection there. You're supposed to understand the importance of developing each other spiritually. Like we said, calmly. Right? People, right, don't pick things up when you're rough. People don't pick things up when you're overpowering. You can't come home like a dictator, right? Everything has to be a certain, it says a woman is gematria, ish is gematria dvash. Woman is gematria honey. Why? Yeah. The ish is gematria dvash. Why? When you come to a beehive, to take out honey, you got to be very gentle. Right? Women are the same thing. You got to be very gentle in order to be able to get your message across to them. They don't understand force. They react, become defensive, right? So therefore, but say if a person, he blinks over there to palliate, say if a person was blessed with a good wife, right? He was blessed with a good wife, smart, intelligent, she finds grace in her, the Gemara says, who's considered rich? A person who has a good wife. Right, the Abu Maaseh, the Manish writes over there, that means that she always dresses very pretty for her husband. She takes care of the house. She's always very pleasant. Right, she finds her husband falls in love with her very strongly. Right, when a woman treats the husband the right way, the husband eventually softens up and becomes very in love. He loves her even more. He just becomes very precious to him. Right, but he says over here, even if a person was not zoche to marry an Eshet Chayil, even if a person got stuck with a wife that's very difficult, he says, and it's very difficult for him to be able to deal with her. She's a difficult person to deal with. You can't find a way to be able to create a common ground. But what? A person needs to still be careful, to control himself, and to do everything b'shalom, and to do everything very friendly. Why? L'chvod Shechina. L'chvod Hashem. Right? You know that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is the wife that Hashem gave you. This is what Hashem wants you to deal with. Right? The Chida writes that how does a person know what they think about him in Shemayim? He says the way a person's wife treats him. Right? He says the person's wife is like that screen of what they think about him in Hashemayim. Right?
Wow.
Very deep concept, right? Right? So the Chida said, therefore, a person needs to understand that even, right, if a person is given a difficult wife, you should remember what the Gemara says. It's enough that they save us from sin and they raise our children. You have that, it's enough, the Gemara says. You have those two things, it's enough. That in of itself, you have to already know this is the wife that Hashem gave me. You have to be very careful to be able to still be pleasant, to still be nice, to still be friendly, even if she might do something very frustrating. Right? Don't react, you don't have to react. This is the wife Hashem gave you. You have to know how to fix the situation and develop Shalom Bayit. The goal is to develop Shalom Bayit, no matter who your spouse is, because that's the spouse that Hashem wanted you to have. Right? And therefore, a male person should remember, right? Should remember what Chachamim tell us. Women are more light-minded. What does that mean? Right? A lady's hair is very long, but her mind is very short. What is that? They react a little bit differently. Therefore, a person sees that his wife is like that, he needs to be the one to take lead and to be able to teach his wife, to be patient, right? To, even if she gets him angry, but he should find the right time to sit with her and to talk to her and to discuss with her. And if he'll constantly be the good one and he won't react to it and he'll be better, she'll eventually learn to look up to him and learn to change. And if he'll talk to her the right way, eventually she will also water down with all the attitude or whatever else that might be there, right? A person needs to be very careful. A person can degrade her, belittle her, curse her, or hit her, chas v'shalom, right? Like a degenerate person, right? He tells her, you like your mother and this one and that one, and starts and goes on and goes off. Like, this conversation is going to end up anywhere good if you go on that route, right? It's not going to end up anywhere. But he says over here, a person should be careful to do everything properly with a smile. Don't be, even if you're the one being degraded, don't be the one to degrade, right? A person needs to what? A person should accept upon himself what they gave me in Hashemayim b'simcha. Why? A person shouldn't say, oh, this is an accident, maybe I married her by accident. A person needs to say, no, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made this zivug especially for me, right? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu really, this wife especially for me. And this is what Hashem wanted for me. And he says, really, a person who has a difficult wife, like the Gemara says, a person who has a difficult wife won't go to Gehinnom. The Gemara says, a person who has a difficult wife who gives him a hard time, say a person comes home in the morning, he's happy, he wants to just enjoy his morning, and suddenly his wife starts again, why do you have to just calm down, right? No, for a person that's no, this is exactly what Hashem wanted from him. You have to be the smart one to be able to know how to control the situation pleasantly, right? Pleasantly. Right? He says, really, a person when he prays, he should pray for a difficult wife. Why? Because if a person has a difficult wife, he won't go to hell. But many people can't withstand that challenge, and they themselves start falling apart. So we don't want it. But really, it's a good thing because you don't go to hell afterwards.
I thought if your wife is not difficult and she loves you, it's a reflection of what they think of you above.
That's also very good. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Right? That is very true. But if that's the wife that Hashem gave him, a person has to understand also that there's something here that needs to be fixed. Fix it. Right? Fix it. Also, a person needs to make sure that he doesn't develop hatred towards his wife. And it says when a person hates his wife, it creates, also it affects the children negatively, besides the fact that it affects the children negatively during marriage. But even during, when they first initially make children, right, if a person has this hatred towards his wife, it affects the children's souls. Their souls don't come out as good. They don't come out as good. They come out somewhat blemished, right? And one of the ways he says to prevent fighting in the house and arguing in the house, that a man also shouldn't be stingy, right? Sometimes men are stingy. And he says women, they like to have things around. They don't like to feel, right? So therefore, a person shouldn't be stingy. That stinginess also creates that tension in between them, right? And the more that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave a person, the more a person should give his wife and do for his wife. A person should basically try to do everything for Shalom Bayit, because even Hashem said you're allowed to take Hashem's name and erase it in order to keep Shalom Bayit. Even the more so, how much a person has to be careful to keep that Shalom Bayit, to bring the Shekhinah into the house. The more a person has Shalom Bayit, the more it brings Hashem into the house, the more Kiddush it brings into the house, the more it affects the whole entire family. And eventually also the spouse picks it up. But if you constantly react from each other negatively, it's just not going to get anywhere. Somebody has to be the smarter one to be able to bring a balance to eventually bring that harmony into the marriage. Right? He says over here, the same thing would apply to a woman. A woman also, he says, has to love her husband and respect him like a king. She has to fulfill all of his desires. She knows the husband likes this, she does this. She knows the husband likes this, when he comes home, she does this. She knows he goes to the store, husband likes this, she buys whatever her husband likes. Right? She's always wants to make her husband satisfied. She wants to make her husband happy. That should be her goal, is to know what her husband wants and to be able to do whatever her husband wants. And to help him serve Hashem, to wake him up, to make him go to Shurim, to mechazik him to go learn Torah. Right? A woman also should care for her husband's spirituality. Not only want all the gashmis that there is, right, in order to be able to do. He says a woman should wake up her husband to go daven, to go learn. Even the more so, she shouldn't be on the other end. She shouldn't be the one to withhold him back, right? He wants to go listen to a shurim. She does, oh no, we don't need this right now. Come, let's go over here. She shouldn't be in that category, right? Because why? Because every single sin that she calls him to do, she's going to end up answering for it, right? But a person needs to be very careful that no matter what they do, they should always try to keep Shalom Bayit. And also it says, Chokhmat Hashim Banta Beitan. The wisdom of a woman built her house. The wisdom of a woman, a wife's chokhmah and how she runs the house, will build the house. Right? It says by Korach. What caused Korach to hold the whole thing that caused Korach? right? Well, it's his wife. His wife started everything. His wife started everything, right? His wife became jealous of Moshe Rabbeinu's wife, right? And then eventually she started it with her husband, and her husband started with Moshe, but it really all started from his wife, right? So a woman also has to have that cleverness, that smartness, that she should be able to run the house properly, right? Besides the fact that she needs to be very modest, women need to be very modest in how they dress and how they look, right? All their beauty has to be within. If a woman goes outside and she's dressed provocatively and everybody looks at her and they sin, every time somebody looks at her and he thinks about her, he makes an avirah, they're alright, right? So she's causing, right? And also a woman needs to be very careful to look very pretty at home all the time for her husband, right? And a woman always needs to be very pretty, very clean, very organized. Why? That a husband shouldn't look at other women, right? Because if she's going to look like somebody that just came out of the grave, then obviously her husband's not going to feel satisfied looking at her. Eventually his eyes are going to end up somewhere else, and therefore a woman has to be very careful. The Gemara has a story like this. I don't remember which Chachamim it is. The Gemara has a story where a few of the students of a rabbi, they followed him home, right? And when they got to his house, they saw that his wife was dressed like she was going to a wedding. So they asked, what's this? Like, why are they not going anywhere? We're just sitting down for dinner. He says, you know why? He says his wife dresses up like this pretty every single day, so he doesn't look at anybody else. Imagine if somebody like that, even the more so us, and even the more so in this generation, how much women need to be very careful to always be very pleasant and very pretty and very nice and very pleasant to their husbands, right? He says that even if a woman married somebody very difficult in his midot, right? Say a person that's not the most greatest of all person, mean, angry, a difficult type of an individual, right? It was very hard to deal with, right? Even so, he says, the woman should be very careful to give him the proper respect and the proper love. She shouldn't degrade her husband or belittle her husband because the husband is not perfect in certain ways, right? Because the bottom line is that this is the husband that she wanted her to have. You married him, this is who he was, and you have to respect him the way he is. Oh, you want him to be different, you want him to change? With time. She also has to be pleasant, she also has to be smart, right? In order to fix things, you have to be patient, you have to be smart, right? You can't just expect somebody to change overnight. It doesn't work like that. And therefore he says, even if a woman married a man who's a little bit difficult, but she has to also understand that what this is the Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted this shidduch for her, and to be able to keep the proper Shalom Bayit. He says, just like a woman is careful with the mitzvah of nidah, challah, and lighting candles, so she should be careful with respecting her husband the same exact way. And right? And therefore, Amela, yeah, okay. We'll stop here with Shalom Bayit, yeah. We started a little bit with Shalom Bayit, but now we'll get to Halachot Shabbat. We'll do Halachot Shabbat a little bit. So in Halachot Shabbat, we have a halacha called Hilchot Borer. Hilchot Borer is very common, and people could break Shabbat very easily without even realizing. Right? Borer means it's one of the 39 melachot of when a person on Shabbat is not allowed to separate one thing from the next. We'll see what that means, right? We'll see what that means. He has an introduction, but the introduction might be a little bit complex. We'll just go case by case, and from the cases you'll understand the general rules, right? For example, he says if a person has two foods in front of him, two different types of foods in front of him that are mixed in, anything, food, fruits, anything that are mixed in. Say for example, if a person has peanuts and almonds, and one tray mixed into each other, right? Peanuts and almonds, one tray mixed to each other. So he says, you know what? I don't want the almonds here. I'm going to take out all the almonds and put them into the closet so I can leave the peanuts here. Not allowed. Why? Borer. You're separating one thing from the next. That means that if you're going to take out the peanuts because you don't want them and put them away, right? You're taking them out of that same mixture of the peanuts and the almonds, and you're separating it to put it away because it's borer. It's one of the 39 melachot that we have on Shabbat is borer, which is separating something you don't want from something you do want. You're allowed to separate something you want from what you don't want, but you can't separate, because we learned on Shabbat that all the 39 melachot that we have on Shabbat are learned from the Mishkan. So anything that was done in the Mishkan is also to do on Shabbat. Right? Anything that we learn from the Mishkan is also to do on Shabbat. The Ben Ish Chai also gives an introduction in the beginning of Hilchot Borah. P. Kabbalah explains why B'dafka we have such a malacha. But like I said, we'll see. Some things yes, some things no. We have to see. Right? Say right now, so you're allowed to separate what you want from what you don't want. You're allowed to separate a food from what you don't want, but you're not allowed to separate what you don't want from what you do want. We'll give examples and you'll understand. What you want from what you don't want, you could separate. What you don't want from what you do want, you can't separate, right? So, for example, if a person has a salad in front of him, right, and he doesn't like onions, so you want to take out the onions and put it on the side. You're not allowed. It's chilul Shabbat d'oraita. You eat everything except the onions. You avoid. You could either leave it there. You could either leave it there, or either you could separate the onions with the salad. Meaning to say, if I take everything in the mixture of the salad the same time as I take the onions and I take it out, so I'm not separating one from the next. I'm taking out the whole mixture at one time, right? Which is more complex, right? Or if a person took lemon and he squeezed it into a salad and a few pits fell inside, you can't take out the pits and take them out like that, right? Just leave it there, mix it up, eat it, and when it goes in your mouth, you could take it out of your mouth. But to separate it, you're not allowed. That's an issur d'oraita. If a person's separating, I'm gonna go so far to tell you that if a person separates what we just said, takes out these lemon seeds, for example, on Shabbat, it's an issur. If a person will do it purposely, knowing that it's a sur, be issur karet. You know what karet means? It's the same punishment as eating on Yom Kippur. That's how severe breaking Shabbat is. It's the most severe laws in the Torah is breaking Shabbat. It's severe beyond, right? And therefore these laws are very important. The Mishnah Berurah says that if a person does not learn Hilchot Shabbat, he could break Shabbat. He's for sure going to break Shabbat every single week. He's for sure going to break Shabbat every single week.
But he's still doing his best to keep it if he doesn't know.
You have an obligation to find out. You have an obligation to learn. You can't say, I'm going to get on the road and drive my car to the best of my knowledge, right? 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 I'm going to break everything, stop signs, right? The cop pulls you over when you pass the red light. I didn't know I couldn't drive a red light, but I didn't do anything dangerous, right? But you can't pass the red light.
What's another example of
Borer?
Borer that people commonly do, but it's not allowed?
We'll see.
From the food or whatever.
We'll see. Oh, you want me to tell you another common example? If you have white fish and red fish, all mixed into each other on one plate, one on top of the other. You know how they put one on top of the other? They overlap them with each other. So they say, look, I don't want all these white fish. I'll save the white fish for later. I take out all the white fish and I put only the red fish out. I leave the white fish.
You can't put it even on a next plate next to you?
If you don't want it, you can't separate. No, you cannot.
You can't take it out of that.
Not unless you give it to somebody who wants it and who's going to eat it.
But you mean all, the entire portion of it, right? I could still take one red fish and put it on my plate.
If you want to eat it, you can take whatever you want. If I have a mixture here, I could take whatever I want. I could take the red fish and say, okay, I'm eating the red fish. But I can't say, look, I don't like this whole setup over here with the red fish and the white fish. I'll take out all the white fish. I'll save it for Sudah Shlishit, right? And I'm going to eat the red fish now. It's an issur d'oraita. Just broke Shabbat on the d'oraita level.
Unless you find someone who says, listen, I don't want this white fish, you want it, take it, eat it, you're good.
If somebody eats it, yeah, of course you're good.
You gotta eat all of it.
Whatever you're separating, right? You can't take out the white fish, but if you want, you could take out the red fish. Take whatever you want. Whoever wants to eat it will eat the red fish, right? So therefore, you have to be very careful, right? So that's if you want to take out what you want from what you don't want. Sometimes, even when you take out something you want from what you don't want, could also be asur. For example, right? I want the red fish and I don't want the white fish, so I'm taking the red fish. Or if I want, I have a platter of fruits, all mixed each other. So I want to come and I want to take an apple. There's apples, oranges, bananas, everything in one basket, all mixed each other. So I take out an apple from the mixture, right? So I'm taking what I want from what I don't want, right? If I'm taking what I want, I'm allowed to eat it. But even when you're taking something you want, if you took it out of a mixture, you have a certain time frame that you're allowed to eat it.
Why?
For a start,
We'll see. So it really depends. If I'm taking something out of a mixture and I'm preparing it for a meal, so I'm allowed to take something out of a mixture that I want. For example, I'm preparing for a meal. I have the red fish and the white fish together, right? I only want the red fish for this meal. I'm not taking out the white fish. I'm just taking out all the red fish and I'm putting it on a separate plate. I'm putting it out for this meal, right? So I didn't take out the white fish. White fish I didn't touch. I took out the red fish. I put it out for this meal. Now, I could take it and put it out for this meal. So once it's in this meal, as long as this meal goes, you're allowed to, it's fine. As long as this meal goes, it's fine. But you have to make sure that you separate it close to the meal. You cannot say, look, they're going to come home shacharit 12 o'clock. Now it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to separate everything now, set the table, and in 3 hours they're going to come. I'm going to go to the park for now. Right? That you cannot do. You can only separate within half hour of the meal, or if you need an hour or two to prepare for the meal, you're allowed to separate before. As long as you need to prepare for that meal, you're allowed to separate. But you cannot separate 3 hours before, and it's going to take you 10 minutes in order for everything to be ready in 3 hours from now. That's asur. So even when you're separating what you want from what you don't want, it can only be close to the meal, or as long as you need in order to be able to prepare. Yeah.
Let's say the wife puts fish on the table, right? Red and white, okay?
Yeah.
Time to put it back in the fridge.
Yeah.
She has to take the red fish and put it in the red red fish container, and the white fish in the white fish container. Is that considered borer?
It's borer if it was initially in a mixture. It's borer. What you should do to begin with is don't put them in a mixture. Put the red fish separately and put the white fish separately. And when you want to put them away,
It's a mixture.
no. What do you mean on the table to mixture?
She was setting the table. She made it nicely.
She put it on one plate.
That's a good question.
That's fine. If it's on one plate, but the red fish is on one side and the white fish is on the other side, it's two separate things. It's only when they're overlapping and they're touching and it's a mixture is the problem.
All these laws, how does this allow you to enjoy Shabbat? Every second you're kind of like concentrating. You know what I mean? Like you.
I tell you the truth. At first, when you learn all these halachos, at first it might seem like, what could I do? What I can't do. But after like a month or two, and you get used to it, you don't even feel it anymore. It becomes like natural. It becomes natural to you. You don't even. It doesn't even.
How many halachos is on the table itself? Separating. Like for instance, many.
Not that much. Separating is one of the most common ones. Separating, squeezing. Squeezing.
Saying, where's the from the beginning? Where would the enjoyment be?
The enjoyment is in the spirituality that Shabbat has to offer you. There is enjoyment in the physicality, but the enjoyment is in the spirituality that Shabbat has to offer you, and the tremendous self-control that Shabbat teaches you. Self-control that Shabbat teaches you.
You're going to say it's all self-control.
It's the Shabbat has a certain Shabbat enjoyment is a spiritual enjoyment besides for the physical enjoyment, but it's the spirituality of the day that we're trying to connect to, and then when a person connects to that spirituality of the day, it's a very ecstatic feeling spiritually. It's not just about sitting down and just eating and going to sleep, right? It's not what Shabbat was meant for, right? Shabbat has Shabbat Su'udah. There is an aspect of enjoying your meal, right? But there's also an aspect of keeping Shabbat Lefi Halacha and also sanctifying yourself and uplifting yourself and serving Hashem through Shabbat. There's a higher purpose to it. What? I just told you. To connect spiritually to the day. To learn more, to daven more, to connect to all the mitzvot that you're doing throughout the day. At every time that you're eating something and you have the ability to separate and you don't separate at that moment, you also just made a mitzvah. You also just sanctified yourself. You also just served Hashem. You're serving Hashem throughout all of Shabbat also, which is a tremendous chus for a person. That in of itself is a zechut for a person to be able to serve Hashem, to get close to Hashem for every moment. Right? But these things are not, for people that put themselves in these situations, it might be difficult. But really they're very easy to work around or not to fall into. These things are not really so hard to keep. Right? So also, right, so if a person needs to separate for this meal, we said that what? You can separate within half hour of the meal or the amount of time that you need to set up for this meal. That means that what? You want to set the table, it has to be setting it the amount of time that you need or right before the meal. But you can't set all the table and make all the salads and separate everything you need to separate in early in the morning, make the table ready and then go to shul for 3 hours. A woman is not allowed to do that. She has to set the table before the men come home because a lot of the things that she does consist of separating. For example, she's opening containers and taking out different vegetables and setting things up. All these things consist of separating, right?
Let me talk a little bit on the shul on Shabbat.
There's no mitzvah for a lady to go in shul on Shabbat. No, if anything, I'll tell ladies not to go to shul at all. Stay home, take care of the kids, daven at home. There's no reason for a woman to go to shul. Absolutely no reason for a woman to go to shul.
How does a woman work on preparing everything? Obviously, having everything prepared before Shabbat comes. What's the best way for a husband to get to a wife?
To be able to teach her to prepare everything?
I mean, it's just kids and all.
Come home and help her. Sam, come home 2 hours early, 3 hours early. No, you can't do it on the expense of going to shul. Not unless it's a serious situation. Shalom Bayit has to be with justification, with a balance. You can't say Shalom Bayit, I won't daven, I won't eat, I won't learn. There's no end to it. There's no end to it. A person has to know his relationship. Sometimes if a person's wife, he sees she's very out of it, and if he's going to now ditch her to go daven Friday night in shul, and she's going to be very frustrated and everything's going to turn upside down. Disaster. So maybe there you have to be smart. Better. Maybe there's better to pray at home and to stay home and to calm things down a little bit if you know that that's a situation. You have to use your brain, right? You can't be stupid. You can't just say, okay, let everybody go to hell, I'm going to go, let everybody figure themselves out. But you have to be smart also. You have to already from the beginning of the day take care of things in a way that it doesn't get to that point. Don't let it to turn into a disaster and then try to fix the situation. You know that your wife on Friday is going to be hectic, so you try to set up something with the kids, you try to do something, you try to organize things in a way that it won't lead to that point where you have to start breaking it apart.
You gotta think 4 days in advance.
You gotta think 4 days, yeah. You gotta think 4 years before you get married. 4 years in advance.
You'll never know that.
Right?
You'll never know.
But the point being is, no, you have to understand the situation. You can't just overload everything, right? Most women prepare for Shabbat, they don't mind preparing for Shabbat. But when you dump everything on them at once, they get frustrated. Right? They get frustrated. Now some women don't care. Some women don't care. Some women, they'll figure out the kids, put them in the backyard, they'll play, they'll put things in, they'll do this and that. Women are different. You have to be able to deal with your wife. This is the wife Hashem gave you. This is the wife you have to deal with her, with your wisdom, and be able to keep a proper balance at home. Right? Don't make a crazy house. Right? So it says over here, you're only allowed to separate for that meal. For example, if a woman is now preparing in the morning, right, for the Suda lunch, she says, I have over here a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, a lot of different types of fishes, a lot of different types of nuts, and so on and so forth. She starts to separate the red fish from the white fish, the vegetables from the vegetables, and the fruits from the fruit. She starts to separate everything for this meal. So she's allowed to take what she wants from what she doesn't want when she's separating from a mixture for the meal she's going to eat now. But she says, you know what? I'm already going to separate now for Sudash Nishit also. You're not allowed. Not allowed. Right? She has to make sure that you only do it for this meal, and whatever is left over is fine. But you have to make sure that when you separate for now. You separate for this meal. Right? The Ben Ish Chai has a she'ila. The Ben Ish Chai has an interesting question. You're only allowed to separate what you're going to eat, right? But I can't separate something if I'm not going to eat it. Correct? You can't separate something if you're not going to eat it. You have to separate now for eating. What about if I have guests came over? Right? I have guests came over. I have 5-6 people come. I want to make a nice fruit platter. I know oranges almost nobody's going to eat. Apples maybe 1-2 people are going to eat. Pomegranates maybe a few people are going to eat. But what am I going to bring? 3 pieces of oranges, 5 pieces of an apple, right? You want to make a big fruit platter. You want to make it representable. You want it to look decent. You're not going to bring, you want an apple? Okay, give them an apple. You want an orange? Okay, give them an orange, right? You don't want to just bring it like this and then give people fruit by fruit. So Ben Ish Chai has the question. He says that you're allowed to peel apples and oranges and bananas and start separating pomegranates and dates. When you open up a date, right? You have to separate the pit from the date. Otherwise, you can't eat it, right? So you want to open up the date and hold the pit and take the date off and put it on the plate. But you're separating. But you're only allowed to separate if you're going to eat now. But you don't know if anybody's going to eat all of this. And you're sure the amount that you're separating, nobody's going to eat all these fruits. Maybe everybody will eat a little bit. The Ben Ish Chai says, is that considered separating and you're not going to eat it because who's going to eat all of this? You know what I mean? Or is that considered, no, since I need this whole plate for the guests, and therefore this whole separation is considered necessary for this meal, and therefore it's permissible. How do you look at it? The Ben Ish Chai and Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach say it's okay. Why? Because you're making the whole mixture for the guest now, for the Su'udah now. Since it's for now, and this whole mixture is there to be representable, to be eaten by these guests now, it's fine. It's considered like you separated it for now.
On the table, what if you do it on the table, you see an apple, you peel it?
That's for sure okay. Rav Avadia says you're not allowed to do what we just said. Rav Avadia said, Safek Isur Deoraita. You're not allowed to. What?
Those laws already in the Shulchan Aruch. Wasn't there like a stamp on it?
No. This particular question was not brought in the Shulchan Aruch. The Ben Ish Chai had a back and forth whether or not it's permissible. Ben Ish Chai concluded that since the whole platter here is necessary for the meal, even you're separating a lot of different fruits.
The Shulchan Aruch didn't bring it up. Why would we make something out of it?
But what do you?
He's bringing it up. It's his question.
The Shulchan Aruch is not going to talk about every specific case. The Shulchan Aruch will give you general guidelines and rules. When you learn the laws from the source out, you see all the general guidelines, you see all the rules. So now it's up to Gedolei HaTorah, people that are mass giants in Torah, to be able to take a situation and dissect it and to realize which rules apply and which rules don't apply. Halacha is halacha, but every halacha has defining rules, and you have to be able to know how to apply these defining rules to the situation to know whether it's permissible or not. So based on the Ben Ish Chai, he said he thinks that it's fine, right? Rav Avadia didn't like it.
So what's the you know what I'm saying? Like how do you...
Chachamim, the Svara, he held that the whole thing here is the tzorach dis Seudah.
Yeah, I would also think like this.
Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach also held like that. Rav Avadia said no, you don't have a clear proof to prove that you're allowed to separate many things that you're not sure whether people eat and just put it out there. It says you have to make for yourself one rabbi, follow that halacha and leave. Right? If you follow Chacham Avadia, I would do it. I follow the Ben Ish Chaim. That Hashem li I don't know. I don't know if that's you gotta have one Rav. Yeah. Questions? Why? If anything, they say the other way around. When you have a chacham that comes later, usually go after his psakim. Why? Because when he comes later, he sees everything everybody wrote until that point, and he's able to look backwards and look into things to see if maybe anybody missed a certain point. Right? So we go after Batra, there's such a cloud. But you have to make yourself a Rav and see exactly if that's the mahalach you want to go. Now we'll do one more halacha. We'll do two more halachot. It says that you're allowed to separate even though you're not going to eat it if you're doing it for somebody else that's going to eat it. For example, right? Peeling an egg consists of separating. Peeling an egg consists of separating. Right? I'm peeling an egg. But it has to be the altar. You have to do it for now. I can't peel it and leave it. It's not borer because that's derech achila, but it's still borer that it has to be eaten now. Right? So I'm peeling something, or for example, I have the mixture of fish that we just mentioned, right? You're allowed to peel it. If the only way you could get to the food is to peel it, then that's considered derech achila. We'll continue next week, this halachot in more detail, but just to get this halacha, right? If I know right now you want this particular fish, I'm not eating it, you tell me, can I get a piece of fish? I'm going to separate the fish and give it to you. That's also okay. I'm allowed to separate for you. As long as you're going to eat it, it's okay. Your kid tells you, can I have a piece of fish or can I have a piece of meat? And there's a mixture of a whole bunch of different pieces of meat, different types of cookings of meat, together mixed in one plate. You're allowed to take it. Like those boards they have, they have these new boards, meat boards, right? So they have like a whole bunch of mixtures there, right? So your kid tells me, can you give me a piece of salami? So you're separating. You're allowed to separate for somebody else if he's going to eat. You not only for yourself you're allowed to separate. You could separate for somebody else if they're going to eat it as well. That's also okay. Now, what about if you have salmon fish? But these salmon fishes are all cooked differently. Some are raw, some are roasted, some are fried, some are this, right? So you have like a salmon platter, like a whole salmon or different types of fishes, right? And they take salmon and they make them in all different ways and they put them together on a platter with, jalapenos, onions, and so on and so forth. They make it fancy, right? So it's really salmon, it's one fish, but they're all cooked differently. So since they're all cooked differently, it's considered like two different things. And therefore there also you have to be able to separate what you want from what you don't want. You cannot say, okay, look, everything here is in a mixture. I want to take this out, take that out for Sudah Shishit. I'm going to take this out, take this out for the Sudah now. You're not allowed. You could take out what you want now for this meal. You could take out what you want, put it on a plate and put it there, and whatever's left over you could save for later.
Because of the way it's cooked?
If it's cooked differently, right, then it's considered like two different species. What?
Raw, cooked.
Because it's considered like two different minim. It's considered like two different items. It's considered like two different items. Pretty much everybody says that, yeah.
If I have steak, all baran. One is really well cooked, one is not so cooked, one is really black.
All one thing?
They're all in one plate.
It was cooked like that purposely to make them different?
Cooked in one pan, but one got more heat.
No, that's fine. That's okay.
That's not a mixture.
No, that's not a mixture, no.
Raw,
part.
raw.
Yeah. So this is why we have to really go through it, right? But if you have roasted meat and you have cooked meat, right? That's also considered two different types, right? If I take roasted meat and I take cooked meat, it's two different textures, two different flavors. It's completely different, right? What? But it's different. If you go to a restaurant, you say, "Can I get shish kebab?" and they give you boiled meat, you're gonna be happy? It's different. It's different food. It's the same thing. It's different.
Well done.
It's different, right? And therefore, right? And therefore, the pieces of meat, one is roasted, one is cooked. It's considered like two different pieces. And if they're all mixed together in a plate, you have to be careful that you take only what you want from what you don't want. However, we'll finish off with this. If you have one whole chicken that you cooked, and you ripped off the legs, the arms, everything, you took the whole thing into pieces, and you put everything on one plate. Do you say the leg and the thigh is two different things? No. One whole chicken, cooked one way, and even though you took it apart in pieces, that's all considered like one thing. So I could say, look, I want to save the legs for later, I'll eat the thighs for now, that you're allowed to. Right? Baruch Hashem. Right? See, all of this is enough just to say Baruch Hashem. So we're going to continue these laws next week because there's a lot more details and there's a lot more to know. And you have to teach it to the home. You have to bring Halachot Shabbat to the home. There's thousands of halachot for Halachot Shabbat. There's a lot of halachos that you need in Halachot Shabbat. It's one of the most complex halachot to know. It's Halachot Shabbat, but it's kedai. Must take an English book, come home, tell your wife every Friday night, every Shabbat day, 2-3 minutes, we're going to learn Halachot Shabbat. Start from the beginning and keep moving along. You'll be surprised your wife will keep it also. She'd want to keep it also. Women, when they see your husband, you see you're devoted and you're learning, so they'll keep it. What? They'll ask questions. They'll get involved. Believe me, they'll get involved. They'll get so involved. They're gonna go to shurim, right? And God come home and start teaching you. Yeah. So you have to start small. Say, I would really like to learn Hilchot Shabbat for a few minutes every Friday night or Shabbat day. Just take it out. Should be okay with it, and learn it, right? And B'ezrat Hashem, you'll see with time, and you'll get used to it. You won't even realize, right? You won't even realize. What? Parents are a little bit more.
Yeah, right, sure.
You have to know your parents. All parents are different. You have to speak to the Rav in the shul that your parents go to. Let him do it with your parents. That's usually easier. It depends on your parents. It's usually easier. Tough. Have a good day.